So inventory declined last week. First time, and we had this like nice couple of weeks where we saw like 8,000 plus homes come to the market. And then nationally, we saw a decline of a little over 3,000 homes coming to the market. I know locally here, what we saw over the past 7 days was an increase of 761 new listings coming to the market, including coming soon new listings and back to active, which I want to hit on here for agents. I think there's a play there that you could run to get some additional homes sold. Inventory stalled out again. I was really hoping we would have seen another bump. Even if it was just up like 1,000 homes, I would have been happy. But that decline is a bigger issue here, that people just are still not ready to take that jump. And we're going to need to see more stability. But it's also, I think it speaks a lot to the builder issue that's out there, because people just aren't moving as frequently. I mean, that number's grown significantly. 10 years ago, it was like 7 years. Now we're at 11 years is the average that people live in their homes. And what are you guys seeing locally in your markets?
I thought you had a question
first
for me.
I want to say.
We do. We're going to end there. Don't worry.
All right. Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh. Well, I was going to say, I don't think it's a case of not ready to move. In some cases, and across the board, I think it's a bigger case of cannot move. I think that still with we talked about it over and over, the lock at 2 to 3% in an interest rate and moving up into the 6s makes it financially unfeasible, not feasible for some folks to move. And yeah, no, we're down. We were down about 30% in inventory in Massachusetts. But to what you brought up, we have 100 listings that came back on market this week. So deals that fell apart, which I know we were kind of lamenting about this in our accountability call. I think, which one of you had like 2/3 of your deals fall out?
1/3. 2/3 would be even worse. 1/3 still sucks.
Fallout. Right.
Well, buyers are in a tough spot because they may have an inspection, and we just had a buyer had an inspection. The furnace and the septic tank both need to be completely replaced. The furnace blew up during inspection, turned it on, and just boom, was 32 years old, and the septic failed. So the sellers are kind of like, hey, we're representing the buyer, but the sellers are kind of like, hey, we've got other offers and maybe somebody's willing to take this on. We may start talking to them. The buyer's been looking for this particular neighborhood, this particular house for a year and a half, has been living with kids at one of the parents' house, sold the house, high. Maybe it was a year ago. Maybe it's been a year. Feels like 2-3 years when you're living with kids and in-laws and all this kind of stuff, right? So a year
sounds like hell. That's what that sounds like.
Sell at the peak, and then, living a family looking for this one particular school district, all the stories there. And now you're in this pickle. It's like, what do I do as the buyer coming in? And that would deplete my cash. That would deplete all my cash going new septic, new furnace. What's the advice for the knowledge broker in that situation? I'll get into the inventory for me locally in a second, but what's your advice for agents out there dealing with buyers with these types of concerns, these types of inspection reports? Is why we're seeing deals fall out of contract. Do you let it fall out of contract, or do you try to get them to stay in that deal, knowing how hard it's going to be to get back into another deal?
I think a lot of it comes down to what was done before the deal went under contract, right? And I think the future pacing of understanding what are the issues that are likely to come up and how much tolerance does the buyer have for those issues. A furnace that's 32 years old, I think one of the conversations that an agent should be having in that situation is, you can tell by looking at it that it's 32 years old and that the buyer needs to be budgeting to replace it. It might work today, but it might not work the day after they move in, and that should be an expense that they're already budgeting for. Septics are a little bit different, and Mass requires passing septic in order to transfer title, so less of an issue for us. But the furnace one, I think that agents can future pace through a lot of that kind of stuff with the knowledge and insight into what are the typical things within a home of that age.
Yeah, and you got to future pace conditions because you already know this in the disclosure without even seeing the property.
Well, it's another example of proper preparation preventing poor performance. I mean, these conversations, and we were talking about this internally at our team. the cadence of communication right now has gotten way too casual with clients. Like they're kind of saying, oh, well, we'll do this, we'll do that. It's every single conversation you have with an active buyer or seller, the deal and the transaction's on the line. And if you don't treat your business that way, and you're joking around too much, or you're not realizing, hey, this client might want to fire me if I don't handle this properly, or I might lose them if you don't have them under a contract. I mean, the market is just, it's one punch after another. It's like, if you're a buyer right now, it's like getting in the ring with Mike Tyson in the 90s. Like, it's not going to be easy. And if you're not treating every single conversation that way and being on point at these meetings, to Lisa's point, a 32-year-old furnace, you should be telling them, hey, let's budget to replace this, because when I sell your home, and if it's working, I'm going to defend that and say, hey, it's not a material defect. That's what the contract calls for in Pennsylvania. A lot of buyers, they always want to get, oh, I want a credit for future improvements. Not the market for that right now. And if you're not explaining this to people at the initial meeting, when you first meet them, or one of the first conversations, and you're just showing them houses and trying to be their friend instead of being their knowledge broker, their consultant, their advisor, their guide in this process, then that's where you're going to see these deals fall out. The flip side here, I'm on my pedestal here, Byron, so please don't interrupt. It is that if you lose the property, right, you're like number two, because you can usually find out, like if you come in like second or third, I'd be on the lookout and tell the agent, hey, we're ready to be the backup offer in case something does go sideways, because some of these buyers are making offers where they go higher than they want to because they're in the moment. And that deal blows out too. And it's not even an issue with the house. It's an issue of, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have bought this house. This wasn't what we wanted to do. And they're looking at like HOA and condo docs as an out, or they're just getting cold feet, or they're using the inspection as an out. So I think that there's two plays here. One is the initial education, and the second is making sure that you're not treating the agent like a jerk, getting upset, bringing emotions into it. Be their friend, be their backup plan, be their plan B, because it's going to make the listing agent look better. And maybe that home doesn't go back to the market. They just go right to you.
This isn't the market for buyer agents to be over promising to their buyers of, I'm such a great negotiator. You could be the best negotiator in the world right now. And when you're up against 40 offers, you might just get blown out of the water. I don't care how many negotiating tactics or skills that you have when you're up against 40 offers, the likelihood of a cash deal coming in and blasting you out of, battleship style, blasting you out of the ocean has increased so much. So if you make those promises, and it's due to the lack of inventory. And so here's a number you may want to share. I'm just reading out of the Wall Street Journal right now. Here's a number you might want to share with buyers to help them realize that there's not inventory coming back on this year to make the home shopping experience easy. It might also be a number you want to share with a seller who's sitting on the fence. Is now the right time to sell? Yeah, it's the perfect time, bud. So as of March 31st, nearly 2/3 of primary mortgages had an interest rate below 4%. Why would 2/3 of homeowners with a mortgage below 4% want to sell? This is according to mortgage data from Black Knight. About 73% of primary mortgages have rates for 30 years. Okay, so 73%. So 3 out of 4 mortgages are fixed for 30 years, and two out of 3 of those have a rate below 4%. That entire section of homeowners, unless it's death, divorce, diamonds, diapers, or a diploma, they're not selling. Okay, so you're going to be locked up there for a long time until we get closer to the 5%. That's why I'm rooting for 5% rates by the end of the year, because I think that'll hopefully loosen it up.